Well, how very fortunate are all of us here this evening, for Michael Goldmann-Gilead has generously traveled all the way from his home in Israel to share with us some of his unique experiences, both in the maelstrom of Nazi inhumanity and as one of just 3 surviving members of the Israeli law enforcement team that more than 55 years ago famously brought to justice one of the arch criminals of the Holocaust, former SS Obersturmbannführer Adolph Eichmann. Apprehended in 1960 by Mossad intelligence agents in Argentina, where he was living under the false identity of Ricardo Clement, Eichmann's 1961 trial in Israel was a landmark in world legal history, a proud watershed moment in the history of the then very young Jewish state, and a decisive moment in the post-history of the Holocaust, especially in the way that the experiences of the Shoah's survivors came to be shared and to be received and ultimately cherished. Not since the original Nuremberg trial in 1945-46 had a criminal trial. This was, by the way, the world's first televised trial. Not since then had a trial riveted the world's attention, as did the trial of State of Israel versus Adolph Eichmann. First, to set the stage, so to speak, let's view an 80-second newsreel narrated by the legendary Ed Herlihy that was screened in movie theaters worldwide in April 1961.
In Jerusalem, the trial of Adolph Eichmann begins, reviving memories of the Nazi horrors of the Second World War. Entering the bulletproof prisoner's box is the man charged with the annihilation of millions of Jews in Nazi death camps. Searching problems of conscience and of international law will be raised by this trial, one of the most stirring of modern times. Eichmann himself is impassive as the 3 judges who will decide his fate enter. Now, after 15 years in hiding and 1 year after his sensational abduction from Argentina, Adolph Eichmann is indicted on 15 counts of crimes against the Jewish people and crimes against humanity.
He accused, together with others, during the period 1939 to 1945, caused the killing of millions of Jews in his capacity as the person responsible for the execution of the Nazi plan for the physical extermination of the Jews, known as the final solution of the Jewish problem.
Eichmann's attorney, Dr. Robert Servatius, opens by denying the legality of the trial and questions the jurisdiction obtained by Eichmann's forcible capture. Dr. Servatius further suggests that Eichmann be tried by a neutral or international tribunal. Israeli Attorney General Gideon Hausner, the chief prosecutor, replies that no one except the State of Israel has sought to bring Eichmann to justice, and cites the Nuremberg war crimes trials as precedent for this trial. Throughout, Eichmann remains icy calm, his fate at last in the scales of justice.
As you are about to witness firsthand, one might fairly say that for our purposes here, there are many Mickey Goldmanns, all somehow combined in one single person. He is a Holocaust survivor, born in Katowice, Poland, whose parents and little sister were deported to their deaths, and who still bears the prisoner number that was tattooed on his forearm at Auschwitz, and also the scars of a nearly fatal whipping inflicted by the SS on the teenaged Goldman before he was sent to that infamous death camp. He is also a member of that pioneering generation of Israelis that courageously and tenaciously built and protected the Jewish state from the early days of its 1948 creation. Then, during his service as a senior member of Bureau 06, a special unit of the Israel National Police created to gather evidence against Eichmann, and then during his service as a trial assistant to Chief Prosecutor Gideon Hausner, he was a tireless and accomplished pursuer of justice on behalf of the millions of Jews slaughtered by the Nazis. He is a living embodiment of the Torah's injunction, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. Michael Goldmann-Gilead is a hero of his people, of his country, and of humanity. In sum, I can think of no one more appropriate to educate us about the Eichmann investigation and trial, and what an indescribable honor it is to again be in your presence, sir.
I wish to speak some words about Eichmann himself. It wasn't an easy task to be in the proximity of a monster for 2 years, and Adolph Eichmann was a monster. He became a monster as a young boy when he volunteered to the SS, withdrew from church, and later became the head of the Jewish section in the Gestapo headquarters in Berlin, 4B4 department. His enthusiasm to send Jews to the extermination camps and to the death pits had no limits. He was the one who in 1942 deported over 40 members of my family, among them my parents and my 10-year-old little sister, to their deaths in the extermination camp of Belzec. His monstrous efficiency in murdering millions of Jews was so well known that his direct commander, chief of the Gestapo, Heinrich Müller, said just before the collapse of Nazi Germany, if we only had 50 Eichmann, we would have won the war. For 16 years, he succeeded in escaping justice until he was caught and brought to the trial in Jerusalem. During the first days of the investigation, we were amazed to see in front of us such a despicable and miserable individual. It was difficult to imagine how that same person had sent millions of Jews to their death and was referred to by his SS colleagues as the Judenkönig, the King of Jews. The first time when sitting in front of me, he opened his mouth and looked right at me, I felt if the gates of the gas chambers were opened once again. In another occasion, he noticed the Auschwitz number on my arm. He acted as if feeling sorry, but I knew very well what he was thinking. How did this Judenbengel, ruffian Jew, as they used to call us youngsters, escape my claws? During the trial, he acted as if not understanding why he was being accused for his acts. After all, he claimed he was just following the orders of his Führer. When Eichmann's lies were exposed by Gideon Hausner, chief prosecutor of the trial, Eichmann expressed himself about him, "I don't like this man." Eichmann never accepted blame or showed any remorse for his acts, not during the investigation, not during the trial, and not before his death. In the day of his execution, at which I was present as an official witness on behalf of the Israeli police, he only said, "I was faithful to my flag and to my oath." And when Reverend Hall whispered to him, "Say Jesus," he did not respond, only commented, I believe in God and shall die as a God believer. And I thought to myself in that moment in which God does this muscular belief. Eichmann lived as a monster and died as a monster, absorbed with a fanatic Nazi ideology which has led to hatred, racism, wars, and destruction. This ideology, which caused the death of 55 million victims in World War II, has not passed from our world. It may be using different names or different places, but it is alive and active and continues to feel hatred and even destruction of people because of their race, ethnicity, origin, religion, or skin color. Only one hope remains for humankind if we want to survive and exist: to be free of such murderous ideologies so we can assure the coming generations of the ability of coexistence and respect for the lives of human beings, each and every human being, as we are all born in the image of God. Thank you.
And so now we will have a conversation assisted by Mr. Ben Asher, and I'll begin. Mr. Goldman, you literally bear the scars of your victimization in the Shoah from a terrible crime that was committed against you when you were a teenager in German-occupied Przemysl, Poland. Would you tell us about that?
זה רק מקרה שאני נשארתי בחיים, אחרים לא.
It's just a coincidence that I survived.
הגעתי לגטו בשמש כי אנחנו ברחנו מקטוביץ, איפה שחיינו לפני כן.
I got to the Przemysl ghetto because we ran out of the township named איך זה נקרא?
Katowice.
Katowice.
This is up in Silesia. This is near to the German border. We came to Przemysl because we had a family there.
And then a terrible experience.
ואז מה קרה?
אינני אוהב לדבר על זה,
I do not like to discuss that
כי כשהגעתי ארצה
because when I came to
כמעפיל
Israel
ב-1947,
in April 1947,
ולמישהו סיפרתי מה שקרה לי
and
בין
when I
היתר,
told someone what did I go through, whatever happened to me,
וסיפרתי שמפקד הגטו, אס ז'וזף שוומברגר,
and I told that the commander, SS commander Joseph Schwamberger,
היכה אותי 80 מלקות,
beat me or
Whipped.
put on me with 80 lashes.
אני ראיתי שהאיש שאני מספר לו את זה, הסתכל עליי עם ספק רב אם זה נכון.
And I've noticed that person I was telling this story about, was looking at me with a very big portion of not understanding and suspecting.
באותו הרגע אני קבעתי שאינני מספר את זה לאף אחד יותר.
And at that moment, I told myself, I will be never telling that to anyone.
זה מה שקרה לי, קרה לרבים הולוקאוסט סורווייברס שהגיעו אחרי המלחמה לישראל ואולי למקומות אחרים, הם התחילו לספר ולא האמינו להם.
Whatever happened to me did actually happen to many, many people who have arrived to Israel and maybe to some other places. And when they tried to tell their story, nobody believed them.
ורק משפט אייכמן פתח לנו בחזרה את הפה.
And that was the only thing, which was Eichmann's trial, that allowed us to open our mouths again.
Schwamberger forced the other Jews of your town to watch what he did to you, yes?
שוונברגר, הוא דרש מהיהודים אחרים בעיירה שלך שיראו מה קרה לך?
בדרך כלל כשהוא היכה, דרשו מכל האסירים שהיינו שם ביחד לצאת למגרש בחוץ וכדי להסתכל איך הוא עושה את זה.
In general, when he was admitting the beatings or lashes, he would demand that all the people who were in the cells would come out and witness the lashes, the beatings, and the suffering.
And he used the buckle end of a belt, yes?
Exactly.
הוא השתמש בחגורה.
כן. חגורה שהוא החזיק את הכלב בדרך כלל שלו.
He used that belt that he would use as a leash on his dog, generally speaking.
Well, we will come back to Joseph Schwamberger,
אנחנו נחזור ליוסף שוונברגר.
to the Eichmann story. The entire world was stunned in 1960 by Israel's capturing of Eichmann. Were you surprised or did you know in advance?
הופתעת או ידעת מראש?
It was a big surprise for me.
How did you feel about it?
I was shocked. I knew who was Adolph Eichmann,
Sorry, how did it
and it was impossible to to believe that this is true. That was David Ben-Gurion told us in the Knesset that Eichmann is still kept and brought to Israel. It was for us a shock.
You were in the Israel police, and you were
במשטרת ישראל.
given a position in Bureau 06, newly created, to gather evidence for this enormous trial. How did you come to be assigned to Bureau 06?
כשהביאו את אייכמן והחליטה הממשלה שיעשה לו משפט,
When Eichmann was brought in order the government to conduct his trial,
הוחלט שמשטרת ישראל תקים יחידה מיוחדת לצורך חקירתו של אדולף אייכמן. אני הייתי אחד מהיחידה הזו.
it was decided that the Israeli police force will create a specific, a special
Unit.
group
Unit.
or unit that will conduct the investigation of Eichmann during his trial.
During the investigation before the trial.
Okay. Was the unit under very big time pressure to build the case?
היחידה הייתה בלחץ רב בזמן החקירה.
אנחנו כולנו היינו בלחץ רב מאוד, כי
All of us
כמעט
living-
מחצית היחידה היו ניצולי השואה.
All of us were existing in the constant and never-ending condition of stress because most of us were those who went through Shoah or Holocaust.
And what was your main assignment in Bureau 06?
Around that?
כן. אנחנו היינו 12 קציני משטרה, חוקרים פליליים,
There were 12 of us, the investigators on behalf of police, investigating crimes.
שהובאו מכל חלקי הארץ,
That was brought, all of the group was brought from all around this Eretz Israel.
כל אחד מאיתנו ידע את השפה הגרמנית,
All of us was fluent and knew the German language.
והיות ואייכמן פעל בכל אירופה שהייתה תפוסה על ידי הנאצים,
Given that Eichmann was active all around Europe that was under Nazi captivation,
חולקה החקירה לארצות שונות, וכל אחד מאיתנו קיבל חלק מאירופה כדי לחקור, למצוא דוקומנטציה וגם עדים שיוכלו להעיד בבית המשפט.
then the entire investigation was subdivided into areas of specific activities of each and every country that Nazism and Eichmann were active by. And each and every person got this certain area, certain country, that it was that person's liability, or he had to do it to find the witnesses, eyewitnesses, that is, documentation, and everything pertaining to whatever happened in his given area.
And your area was Poland?
החלק שלי היה להוכיח את אשמתו של אייכמן,
My part was to prove the criminality of Adolph Eichmann
על רצח יהודים בפולין, בשטחי ברית המועצות התפוסים על ידי הנאצים, מחנות ההשמדה והארצות הבלטיות. למעשה, החלק הכי קשה, גם מבחינה נפשית, של החקירה כולה.
So we had to investigate his portion,
אני הייתי אחראי.
and not only we had to investigate, I was the one in charge to the investigation of the
Crimes of Eichmann.
Jews being killed in Poland, as well as Nazi-occupied parts of USSR, then Baltic countries,
And extermination camps.
and extermination camps.
Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec,
Hell no.
Gamaliel.
Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec.
So you interviewed many other survivors of the Shoah.
וחלק מהם הובאו כעדים במשפט עצמו.
Not only that, part of those people were brought as eyewitnesses into the trial.
And that must have been very painful for them to tell these stories.
בדרך כלל, העדים שאנחנו נפגשנו איתם אמרו שהם לא יכולים לבוא להעיד כי מה שיספרו לא יאמינו להם.
The general situation was that those people said they could not have come and show up and bear witness because no one is going to believe them.
Was it painful for you to hear their stories too?
כמובן שהיה קשה, אבל היות ואני הייתי אחד מהם, היה להם יותר פתיחות לספר לי, לדבר איתי על זה.
Of course, it was hard, extremely hard, but given the situation whereby I was a part of them, it made them more, it gave them the ability to open up more to me, as opposed maybe to someone else who was not a part of them.
Is there a particular survivor whose interview stands out in your mind that you could tell us about?
אני חושב שרבים מכם שמעו את השם קצטניק.
I think that many of you heard the name Katsepnik.
הוא היה אסיר אושוויץ, וכשהגיע ארצה הוא כתב ספרים על מה שעבר עליו.
He was a detainee of Auschwitz and he wrote books about things he went through. Once he arrived to Eretz Israel, he wrote the books about it.
כששוחחתי איתו אצלו בבית, הוא אמר, אין לכם צורך להביא אותי למשפט, יש לכם הספרים שלי.
When I talked to him in his house, he told me, there is no need, guys, for you to bring me to the trial. Instead of that, you have my books about it.
אבל לפי החובה להוכיח בבית המשפט את אשמתו של אייכמן, אנחנו לא יכולנו להשתמש בספרים.
But given that the obligation for an eyewitness was to come and appear in person, would not afford us an ability just to use documentation or books.
אנחנו היינו צריכים להביא במשפט דוקומנטים, בעיקר מסמכים מקוריים נאציים, והעדים שהיו קשורים בצורה זו או אחרת לתוכן של אותם המסמכים.
We had to bring the people who went through all that and the documentation from the Nazi activities related to those people, and anything else in conjunction with them being able to prove the Eichmann's crimes and Nazi crimes.
When Yechiel Dinur finally testified, it had a surprising climax, didn't it?
כן, אני הבנתי, סליחה.
Show that.
בסופו של דבר, יחיאל דינור, זה היה השם האמיתי של קצטניק, קצטניק זה היה פסאודונים, הוא הסכים להופיע במשפט.
Katsetnik actually was a pseudonym of Yechiel
Dinur.
Dinur. And
והוא הסכים לבוא להעיד במשפט.
And he agreed to come and bear witness during the trial.
והיה לנו חשוב במיוחד.
And we had very, very important, very special, in a very special way.
כי בסיפור שלו, אצלו בבית, הוא סיפר לי גם על פגישתו עם אייכמן עצמו.
Because during the conversation I had with him in his house, he told me about the meeting he had with Eichmann himself.
הוא לא הגיע לסיפור עצמו על אייכמן, כי כשדיבר על אושוויץ, הוא התעלף באמצע העדות.
He didn't he didn't come to actually tell a story about him and Eichmann, because when he only tried to approach it, but starting with telling a story about him in Auschwitz, he simply lost his consciousness.
And here, it's a well-known photo, but what I did not know until recently is that that's Michael Goldman, the officer at the bottom, racing to the rescue. When you attended the trial, let's see if I have that, Mr. Goldman, you were often seated next to the chief prosecutor, Gideon Hausner. Why was that?
לא כמה פעמים, אני ישבתי על ידו במשך כל המשפט.
It's not just a few times. I was seated next to him throughout the entire duration of the trial.
כי הייתי צריך, לפי בקשתו, להיות הפרסונל אסיסטנט של גדעון האוזנר בזמן המשפט עצמו.
Because based on Gideon Hausner's request and demand, I had to act as his personal assistant, and that's why I was seated next to him.
You said before that it was the Eichmann trial that inspired survivors to speak out. This was the first trial of a Nazi in which survivor testimony played such an essential role.
זה היה המשפט היחידי שעשינו בכלל לפושע נאצי בארץ.
That was the only trial that we have conducted for a Nazi criminal in Eretz Israel.
What do you feel is the importance of the role that the survivors played in the trial?
כן. גדעון האוזנר סבר, וזה היה בהחלט נכון, שבנוסף לדוקומנטציה, למסמכים, צריך להביא עדים חיים כדי שיוכלו להוכיח שמה שכתוב במסמכים זה נכון. זו הייתה המטרה.
Gideon Hausner was absolutely sure that in addition to the documentation that it was in the prosecution's possession, eyewitnesses needed to be brought in order to prove those documents that were brought by the prosecution.
As I said a moment ago, this was the first televised trial in world history. Video was broadcast all over the world, including here in New York City, a nightly update on New York's ABC affiliate.
Exactly.
And you sometimes assisted the television personnel behind the scenes. Can you tell us about that?
אתה יכול לספר על זה?
במשפט עצמו, למשפט הגיעו עשרות עיתונאים, אני חושב שלפחות 100 מכל הארצות, והם היו חדשים, הם לא הבינו בדיוק את הספציפיקציה, הספציפיות של המשפט עצמו, אנחנו, קציני משטרה שהיו involved בחקירה, נתבקשנו גם לסייע להם להבין לפי השאלות ששאלו אותנו.
For the purpose of the trial, there were tens, maybe even 100, as much as 100 press people or media people that gathered from all around the world. And we were asked to, given they didn't know clearly what was happening, we were asked to simply help them to understand what was behind all this. They didn't have a clue.
Eichmann famously claimed at trial, as you mentioned, that he had no choice but to simply follow orders. What's your reaction to that? How do you respond to that?
גם בחקירה וגם במשפט, אייכמן טען שהוא רק ביצע פקודות.
Both during the investigation period as well as during the trial, Eichmann was maintaining one thing. He was acting following the orders. Those were his actions.
הוא הסביר לנו, ואפילו השתמש בביטוי, הייתי בורק קטן במכונת ההשמדה.
He explained us, and he even used this way of expression that by saying, I was just a little bolt in this huge machine that was operating then. I was but a little bolt in that entire thing.
אנחנו הצלחנו להוכיח במשפט שהוא לא רק היה, שלא היה בורק קטן, הוא היה המכונה עצמה.
We succeeded to prove during that trial that not only, as he claimed, he was just nothing but a little screw or bolt of some huge machine. He was the machine by itself and by himself.
והדבר הוכח ונכתב גם כן בפסק הדין שבית המשפט קבע.
Decided upon and entered into the sentence.
At the trial, the terrible incident in which Schwamberger whipped you was mentioned by a witness, Dr. Yosef Buzminski. Can you tell us how that came to be?
אני הבנתי. אני לא אוהב לספר על עצמי בדרך
I
כלל.
don't like to be telling about things about myself.
אבל קרה מקרה, וזה לגמרי מקרי לחלוטין, לא היה לו כל קשר לעצם אשמתו של אייכמן.
The thing did happen, and those were among many things that took place, which actually this beating actually did not relate
Was not
in any
relevant.
way,
Was not
in any
relevant
way
to Eichmann.
to the criminality or lack of such of Eichmann.
באחד הימים, לפני התחלת המשפט,
One day, during the days prior to the initiation of the trial,
אני אז הייתי באולם בית המשפט, עוד לא היו האנשים,
at some point I was in the courtroom, which
לפני
didn't have any
שהתחיל
people in
המשפט.
there.
לפני שהתחיל המשפט.
Yeah, before the trial actually started.
והיות והייתי במדי קצין משטרה,
And given I was sporting the police officer's clothes,
ניגש אליי אדם אחד ושאל איפה החדר של גדעון האוזנר.
a person approached me and asked to tell him where the room of Gideon Hausner
The
was
bureau,
located.
his bureau, yeah. ואני שאלתי אותו, כ-personal assistant, בשביל מה אתה צריך את גדעון האוזנר?
And then I asked him, as being the personal assistant, why would you need Gideon Hausner's bureau or room?
אז הוא אמר לי שהוא הוזמן להעיד במשפט על גטו בשמש.
And his response was that they invited me to testify as someone from Ghetto Pshamish.
אז שאלתי אותו, מה שמך?
Then I asked him for his name,
הוא אמר לי, שמי דוקטור בוז'מינסקי,
and he responded by saying, my name is Dr. Buzhminsky.
והיות ואני גם הייתי בגטו הזה, אמרתי לו שאינני זוכר שהיה בגטו אחד בשם דוקטור בוז'מינסקי.
And I told him that given I was in that same ghetto, I don't remember one person who would bear that name, Dr. Buzhminsky.
אז הוא שאל אותי, אתה גם כן הייתי באותו הגטו? אמרתי כן.
And he asked me, tell me, were you also one of the people in this ghetto? And I responded by saying, yes, I was.
אז הוא שואל אותי, מה שמך?
And then he asked me for my name,
אמרתי לו, שמי גולדמן.
and I responded by saying, my name is Goldman.
אז הוא אומר, אני זוכר שהיה נער בשם גולדמן,
And he said, I remember there was a young guy, young kid named Goldman.
I was 17. והוא אומר, אני זוכר את הנער הזה, אבל זה שקיבל 80 מלקות משוונברגר, כי אני ראיתי את זה.
And he said he did remember this kid, Goldman, and he also said, I remember him getting all those 80 lashes by Schwamberger.
הוא אומר לי, אבל סיפרו אחר כך שהוא מת.
But then he told me that rumors were all around telling that that kid has passed away, died.
אמרתי לו, הוא לא מת, הוא עומד מולך.
And I told him, the kid didn't die, he is standing right facing you.
כשהוא שמע את זה, הוא עשה אחורה פנה ורץ לחדר של האוזנר.
Having heard that, he turned like on a dime and ran towards Gideon Hausner's bureau.
אבל שכחתי לומר, שאלתי אותו, מה היה שמך בגטו? הוא אמר לי, שמי היה דיאמנט. דיאמנט.
When I asked him, what did people used to call you while you were in that ghetto? And his response was, Diamant.
אז אמרתי לו, דיאמנט, רופא שיניים, הוא אומר, כן.
Then I told him, that Diamant who was a dentist? He said, yes.
זאת אומרת, אני אותו הדיאמנט. הזכרתי לו,
I am that same diamond.
הזכרתי לו כשלאחר המכות נשקפתי בפרוזדור של הבניין והאגף היה כולו זב דם.
I explained him that after the beating, after the lashes, I was put in the corridor with my face down and with my back that was totally covered with blood.
So after, when he then testified and told the story of this beating, this whipping that he had witnessed, Prosecutor Hausner then said, "Do you see this boy in this courtroom?" And whom did he identify? Sitting at prosecution table,
אני לא ידעתי, כשהוא נפגש עם גדעון האוזנר, הוא סיפר לו על הפגישה שלנו.
I didn't know that when both of them, him and Guido Hausner, met each other, that he mentioned me.
So you weren't expecting to hear your story at the trial?
לא
לא ציפית לשמוע את
לא ציפיתי.
מה שהתרחש לך בזמן המשפט,
לא ציפיתי ולא הייתי, זה היה אינצידנט פשוט מאוד. אנחנו שוחחנו ובזה גמרנו את הסיפור.
I have not been looking forward. I was not anticipating. In my mind, it stayed somewhere. We had a conversation, and that's it.
One of the photographers took a photograph of him sitting there. Auschwitz number visible. This photograph was distributed by wire services and published all over the world. In today's parlance, we would say it went viral. I've told many people, and I've told you, that this is probably my all-time favorite law enforcement photograph. Here, of course, is Mr. Goldman today. You've brought with you, and your son Ron shared with me, some of the important Nazi documents that you all gathered for the trial. Let's look at them, a few of them quickly, and we'll discuss. So this is a product of the so-called Wannsee Conference of January 20, 1942 at that notorious villa near Berlin. And it shows the planning for the liquidation of all 11 million Jews of Europe. And this is an essential document, and I know you wanted to say something about it to the audience.
אחת החקירות שאני ישבתי עם אייכמן היה גם כן בעניין ואנזה קונפרנס.
One of the investigations that I was sitting for with Eichmann was, the subject of it was the Wannsee Conference.
כששאלתי אותו מה היה החלק שלך, הוא אמר שהוא רק כתב את הפרוטוקולים, כי הוא השתתף בוועידה.
What was your part in it? He said, I was just the one who put down the protocol.
The notes. I want to go to the next document. Mr. Goldman explained to me that there was no cooperation from the Polish government, as we know, but that two documents arrived rather mysteriously, one of them being this one, which shows deportations to Auschwitz, and the question that the deputy chief prosecutor, Gabriel Bach, asked was, could it be proved that this was a reliable document? And you pointed out to the line that shows deportations from the Jebnya concentration camp, and you explained how this was reliable. Yes?
הסתכלתי ברשימה הזו ומצאתי את המספר שיש לי על היד במסמך הזה.
I looked at this list and I found a number marked on this list that was the very same number I was bearing on my arm.
Amazing. In 1990, Joseph Schwamberger was belatedly found and arrested in Argentina. He was flown to Germany to stand trial, and you were one of the people who testified and helped get him sentenced to life imprisonment, and
Exactly.
he died in prison. Was that a difficult decision to make to testify?
זה אותו השוומברגר שנתן לי את 80 המלכות,
That is that very Schwamberger who reaped on me those 80 lashes.
ואני העדתי במשפט שלו על אותו המקרה שסיפרתי לפני כן.
And I testified during his trial about and on that grim event when he lashed me.
Was it satisfying to see him convicted?
Satisfied. I am never satisfied about Nazi criminals because it was not enough.
So to return and to close on the Eichmann case, he was, of course, convicted on December 12, 1961, and 3 days later was sentenced to death. Let's quickly show the other newsreel map.
In the courtroom at Jerusalem, the stage is set for the 115th session of the trial of Adolph Eichmann. Prosecution and defense awaiting the announcement of the verdict. Adolph Eichmann, the 55-year-old former Gestapo colonel, comes to judgment before an Israeli tribunal of 3 German Jews who escaped Nazi persecution. Nearly 4 months have passed since the jurist retired to consider the mass of trial evidence. Now, in a 300-page judgment, Eichmann is found guilty of crimes against the Jewish people, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. The verdict made Eichmann liable to become the first man to be executed under a civil court verdict in the state of Israel. Sentencing comes 4 days later. Eichmann to die on the gallows. He still has available to him an appeal to the Israeli Supreme Court, and if turned down there, an appeal for clemency to the Israeli president.
On June 1, 1962, Eichmann was hanged. As Mr. Goldman has mentioned, he was one of a small number of witnesses to that execution. Not to be outdone, of course, the New York Post had another story. So our next to last slide. This is fellow Auschwitz survivor Yehuda Bakon. He testified at the trial about how Nazis forced prisoners to take the ashes of murdered Jews and throw them onto the road so that German vehicles would have traction.
באותה קבוצה, באותו היום שהיה יהודה בקון, אני לא ידעתי על זה, סיפר לי את זה אילי, אני הייתי גם כן בקבוצה הזו.
I was the member of that same
Not
group.
a member, one of the group.
Prisoners.
Oh.
One of the other prisoners
One
who
of
did the
the
same
other
thing.
prisoners, let's put it in the peaceful way here, was I in the same group that Bakon was testifying about. Only back then I didn't know that. Eli told me about it.
It was only one day.
After Eichmann was hanged and his body was cremated, the Israeli government, as Alyssa mentioned, decided to do something else with the ashes, and you were a part of that. The purpose was so that there would never be any place at which Nazis or neo-Nazis could gather to pay tribute to Eichmann. And you have said that At that moment, when you spread the ashes into the Mediterranean Sea, you instinctively said something, and then there was a response. Why don't we close on that?
כשפיזרנו את האפר, בא לי אינסטינקטיבית לומר את המשפט משירת דבורה הנביאה.
We wanted to say a portion of the Dvorah, the prophet song.
הוצאתי את המשפט, כן יעבדו אויביך ישראל.
And I found this sentence saying, that is the way your enemies, your foes, will get lost.
Will perish. Right?
Will perish.
לידי עמד הרברנד הול, הוא היה גם על האונייה.
Reverend Holt, who was also present on that boat,
אני משוכנע שהוא אמר אמן.
and I'm convinced he responded by Amen.
So thus shall all your enemies perish, Israel, and Reverend Hull said, Amen. A fitting note on which to end. Mr. Goldman, thank you so much for coming to this country.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.